So today I wanted to have a talk with you and show you a few different kinds of remodeling that I have come across in my skeleton travels, because I think it's really interesting and really important to keep in mind that remodeling happens for different reasons and in different ways. And when we see bone that's kind of where it's not supposed to be, it's not necessarily always for the same reason. So these three examples that I have today, we have two lower jaws and one pelvis. So this lower jaw here, some of you might recognize, this is our thoroughbred mare lady who I spoke about a couple months ago. Then here we have the pelvis of a pony gelding and the lower jaw of a pony mare. Now, both of these two were quite old when they were put to sleep, and lady was, I would say 11 off the top of my head, 11 or 12, somewhere around there. So let's start with lady. So we know that she has some extensive remodeling through the left and right side of her lower jaw. We believe what happened is that she broke that jaw at some point during her life, and you can see that all of this, let me try and focus, all of this bubbly remodeling here that's completely changed the shape of the lower jaw, especially if we use this girl for a comparison. So you can see you'd have that nice straight profile through there, and for lady we've actually got this huge lip that comes up, connecting into the other piece that was broken, where the body is tried to remodel. Now it is only on this left side of her jaw, the right side is a straight profile. And so looking at the remodeling that she's got here, you can see how the body has attempted to lay down some bone or to calcify in some way to stabilize that area. So possibly what we're looking at is an area that was in constant use, obviously with, all of the things that a mouth has to do. And the two halves could never actually get enough time or enough stability to fuse together. So, perhaps what we're looking at here, where you've got all of these little extra branches, is where the body has tried to lay down some scar tissue, tried to stabilize the area, but it just hasn't been enough. And so that, scar tissue, whatever it was that formed there, actually calcified again in an attempt to stabilize. Now, these two halves of the jaw were held quite firmly together when she was alive. It's not that you could feel them moving independently of each other. But once all of the soft tissue was taken off, the two halves came apart. Very easily, I will say. They weren't ever actually fused together as a single piece of bone. So that's her body attempting to stabilize an area that has had a traumatic break. Over here with this little darling, what we have, you can see these holes in the lower jaw here, and if I show you from the bottom, it goes through the inside of that lower jaw. And if I hold it just right, you can see that there are holes all the way through. Now this little lady, I had a sample of this bone tested to see if there was anything cancerous about it. She had melanomas, and I was wondering if that melanoma had metastasized through to the bone, and it had not. Testing came back with a hypothesis that this actually came from blunt trauma. So possibly she's hit her head in some fashion and caused enough trauma to the site that the bone remodeled. Now, not only that, but then we have the knock-on effect of how that affected her chewing. Obviously, it was quite painful for her, so you can see that these premolars on both sides are worn down excessively, and we have a hook created. Ooh, let me walk my fingers up there. Up back in here. More so on this right side than on the left side. We've also got more wear on those left molars than we do on these right ones. So you can see from these teeth that she was desperately trying to do whatever she could to stay off of these teeth as their roots came down into where that painful area was for her there. So this, where it almost looks like that bone's, it looks a bit like a walnut, it's more like that's come from inside the bone rather than when we look at Lady, where it's come from outside the bone and a break and created more bone structure. This has demineralized and kind of had a blowout from there. The last one that I want to show you is this little guy and his funny hips. So where can I pop him? Let's pop him there so that we can have a good look. So if you have a look here, this is the hip joint on each side of this pelvis. Now this horse was, I believe, 35 years old when he passed away. I didn't know him when he was alive, so I'm only going from the information that I have been given. But for comparison, I have another little pelvis here that we can compare with. So this little guy that I'm holding in my hand, he actually has quite healthy hips, and you can see how very different they are from the bigger horse, who is still only a pony, but he's a bigger horse. So you can see and you can appreciate now the huge amount of remodeling that's happened on both of these acetabulum, both of these hip joints, to the point that he has actually changed the direction in which his hips were oriented. Now, again, we don't know why. We don't know why this would happen for this particular pony. But it has extensively remodeled his hips. They're pointing in completely different directions from where they would have begun, like with this little guy. And what I can also show you is that on the head of his femur, he has bony changes as well. So the head of this joint should actually be smooth. However, that has arthritic change on it as well, all through here too, and back underneath here. You know, so this one begs the question of why was this such a mobile joint, the hip, you know? Why did the body feel the need to over-stabilize this joint to the point where we have this much calcification happening around the joint? And so, you know, that is what I wonder for this one. And again, as I said, I'm only wondering, this is only my hypothesis, but why would he feel the need to stabilize this joint or change this joint, restrict the movement of this joint to the point that his body calcified the surrounding structures and changed the hips so dramatically? I'm not sure that I will ever get answers to these questions. I think it will always just be, you know, I wonder and I guess, and my best guess is, which is fine, you know, because that's how we keep learning and we keep thinking about these things. And, you know, sometimes our opinions change, and I don't see that as a bad thing at all. But that is just 3 different examples in my collection of ponies of ways in which bone can remodel.